At one point, my script super was like, "You got to slow down. You can't give me every freaking 10 circles in one take." Because I was like, that word.
Because it's a two-way street, right? Like he has to like me, but it's also really good that I like him, right? You know?
Yeah. Just getting into the realities of production, I had to trim like 10 pages out of the script.
Big shout out. This is Georgia made. That's very unique. It's Georgia money, Georgia production.
It proves persistence is omnipotent for sure, man, because it just took a long time.
Welcome, everybody, to the Moonshine Storytellers Podcast, where we sit down with working creative professionals and talk about craft and technique of professional storytelling in the evolving landscape of traditional entertainment as it converges with the creator economy. I'm your host, Drew Sawyer, founder of Moonshine Post, which is a full-service post house headquartered in Atlanta. And we're working every day on feature film, series, and advertising projects across edit, color, sound. And today we're going to dive into an indie feature film that we were honored to collaborate on, Signing Tony Raymond. We have director Glenn Owen and editor Patrick Perry. This was a multi-million-dollar independent film, years in the making, and first-time collaboration between these two. And we're going to talk about what it takes to carry a story across decades from an idea to a theatrical release.
Delusional persistence.
That's part of it. We'd love to talk about the trust that's built in the cutting room, especially between you guys, directors and editors, and the collaborative process that makes feature film and the tug of war between creative and even market realities of filmmaking. And maybe what this film reveals about the future of indie filmmaking. And one last thing before we get going, big thanks to our partners today at Adobe for supporting this conversation. We've curated several podcasts in a mini series format they're coming out that will be Adobe centric by nature of the tools that we use in these productions, and using Adobe at its utmost capabilities for professional filmmaking in both films, series, and advertising work that we do at Moonshine. Moonshine's been leading the charge in pioneering Adobe workflows across studios and streaming entertainment, especially since the advent of Adobe Productions back in 2019. So it's one of those can't live without tools here at Moonshine, and truly one of our biggest assets in our disruptive growth in the entertainment movie and series industry. And this movie is no exception because it features a beginning to end workflow using Adobe products, which is something we'll dive into later. So please stick around. All right, I've said a lot up front. Now it's time to get these boys talking. I appreciate it. And we're going to dive in. Glenn, I'm so glad to have you here, man. For those of us that are just meeting you, I'd love to give a quick snapshot of your journey as a filmmaker that led up to the making of this film, Signing Tony Raymond.
Yeah, no, thank you. My background has primarily been in television commercials and branded content. So I got my start early in my career at Turner at TNT, writing and producing movie promos. Before that, I was cutting my teeth directing lower budget cable commercials. I would direct anything somebody put in front of me. It didn't matter. So a car dealer, in the suburbs, or a jewelry store, whatever. So I did a lot of those. They're a little embarrassing to look back on, but I learned a lot, and then started freelancing at Turner, and eventually worked my way up to a creative director, associate creative director role at TNT. I was writing and directing NFL and NBA promos for TNT, like NBA playoff promos. I coined the phrase "win or go home" for the NBA playoffs back in the day. So while I was doing that, I was blessed to get to do a lot of nicely budgeted film shoots for those promos, and really cut my teeth in filmmaking with learning through doing a lot of those film promos. Then I began transitioning into doing TV commercials for ad agencies, and have continued to do that over the last 20 plus years, while still continuing to do a lot of work for TV networks like TNT or ESPN or Disney Channel or 10 or 15 others, where I've done a lot of branded content work for them, as well as promo work. One narrative project that I did for TBS, we did a micro series. So this was one of the early narrative projects I did outside of short films, we did a 40 episode micro series for TBS called My Manny, which was the story about a male nanny who moves in, or who begins taking care of a lady's son. She's widowed. They strike a romance over time. So that was a good introduction into, doing larger narrative arc storytelling. And that, again, that aired for 40 episodes over the course of a few years. And it was around that time that I began writing screenplays and plotting my attempt to transition from doing TV commercials into doing feature films. So yeah, that's been a pretty long journey as well.
It's a packed working director career and writing.
Yeah.
Patrick, let's get to you real quick.
Yeah.
Before we get into the film, I'd love you to tell us a little bit about your path as an editor. You've also worked across features and series and advertising as well. That's actually something you guys share in common here.
Yeah, no, I mean, my story is the way I usually tell it is, was in high school, saw a couple of key movies and realized that I started to feel very passionate about, filmmaking and movies and sort of, cinema at large. Decided to go to school for it, got out, and then, eventually through a sequence of events, you and I meet, Drew, right? And so I kind of start working with Moonshine in post. I've kind of settled, or not like settled into thinking, I think post is something that I'm really interested in. So, I come on, start doing do an internship, do a little assistant editing. Eventually we start cutting some branded content. This is maybe 11, 12 years ago, maybe now around this point. 10 to 12. It's hard to, I can't exactly recall.
It's like 12 to 13 at this point.
It's been a ride. So, and then from some of that branded stuff, we start kind of like gradually kind of kicking up, and, we get involved in some unscripted television where, which was massive learning experiences. And then somewhere along the way, we kind of go from there into the scripted world, and we've been kind of seated in that for a while. So we've gotten to do, a few different TV series, a few different movies. I still do cut advertisements as well. That's something we always talk about, especially in our market, right? It feels it feels like you kind of have to be able to do a little bit of everything, because it's less likely for you to get pigeonholed as being like the horror guy or whatever, like we've had these conversations. But and that kind of pretty much brings me to today in this film, where, not too long ago, Drew shot me a message, just said, "Hey, I got this movie coming in, and I want you to meet the director. He's coming into the shop, and I just want you guys to talk." And so here we are.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't know, but yeah, I'm a post producer also by trade turned post house owner. So, and I know you both from the community here in Atlanta, Georgia. So it's been exciting to see both of y'all's careers over the last years. And yeah, I mean, Patrick, you're my longest termed collaborator to date. We've done a ton of series back when I was post producing as well, notably Creepshow seasons 1 through 3. And we've also done a bunch of features together, which is exciting. So I was really, we'll get to that in a second, but I was really stoked to get to introduce you to Glenn when I knew that I was going to be entrusted with putting a lot of this post together. Glenn, you've been carrying this for about a decade or
A little
more.
A little more.
But I'd like to know, Signing Tony Raymond, sorry to have to ask you to pitch it one more time now that you've actually made it and are selling it actively, but I would love to know if you could pitch the film to us right now for the listeners, but also what drew you to tell this story.
Sure, yeah. So Signing Tony Raymond is the story of a young football coach. His job is on the line. He's trying to crack through at a big time top 5 power program. And he is dispatched to rural Alabama under some dubious circumstances, you find out later, but he's dispatched to rural Alabama to try and sign the nation's top defensive end. So he travels to Alabama and endures a series of crazy misadventures there. He's got,
As you do.
rival recruiters. The town is swarming with them, grifting townsfolk. Everybody's got their hand out. They know money's being thrown around in these NIL days, and then he's also got to win over the kids or the players' wildly dysfunctional family. So he's thrust into this storm of recruiting craziness that he's got to navigate, and along the way, ultimately find out what he really wants to do. At its core, it's really there's a lot of funny parts. There's dramatic parts for sure, but really at its core, it's about finding your purpose. And there's a lot of people in the movie they're on those paths. So that's what it's, I guess, ultimately about. With football as the backdrop.
And just for frame of reference for the folks out there, we can call it a dramedy, right?
Yeah, man, I hate that
Sports
word.
dramedy.
Or a grounded comedy with dramatic undertones. I don't know.
A serious
It's
comedy.
definitely a blend of genre. And we can talk about that when we get into the editing a little bit. I mean, that's
Please.
definitely something that we had. You have to try and manage that.
I'm very interested in
Definitely
exploring that.
in the edit, it's definitely a comedy, but it definitely has a lot of heart and dramatic moments in it.
All right, so what kind of indie film we talking about here? I mean, a lot of people go into making a movie, an indie film, bootstrapping, but you've got a plan, but it takes you about a decade plus to get to it. You're writing this throughout the career that you just gave us a snapshot of.
Yeah.
When does the real business of filmmaking, the apparatus of it, start to form? Because I remember even at the Rome International Film Festival, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, you were in the middle of the fundraise, but you'd already been doing that for some time. So would love to hear about the journey of the writing part to get to the part where you can finally bring on the producers to produce part and build the business around you.
Great question. I'll try to be concise, but yeah, I mean, I banged out the script over the course. It took me a while because again, I had another career. I had a production company, State Line Film. So we're doing projects and I'm just banging away on the script at night as much as I can. And it took a little longer, and I'd do a draft and another draft, get feedback. I always would try to get objective, impartial feedback and just keep getting it stronger and stronger. And the script got pretty tight and the subject matter was interesting to a lot of people. And I sent it to a couple of pretty big producers in LA that attached, and they were trying to get it off the ground. It stalled. I sent it to a pretty big studio. It got good coverage there. It looked like it was going to happen. They weren't going to let me direct it. That's a whole nother story because it was going to turn into a $20 million film. And they're like, well, no, buddy, you're not doing that for your first movie. We're going to hire somebody that's done 3 of them. And I hadn't done any. So I had to live with that. And I'm like, okay, fine, we'll do it. Let me just get this made. Cause at that point I was probably 6 or 7 years in, and I really just wanted to see it get off the ground. That ultimately stalled out. And then, I'm looking up and I'm like, years have gone by when I think it's going to happen. It hasn't. And I just decided to try and take matters into my own hands and raise the money on my own here in Georgia. And so, and when I say on my own, I mean, I knew I would need help and need producer help with that because I didn't really know a lot about that side of things. So I don't know, 5 years ago now, probably 4 or 5 years ago, we embarked on meeting with potential investors, and Champ Bailey, NFL Hall of Famer, came on as our exec producer, and he was very helpful in meeting with people and spreading the word about the project. Slowly but surely, we would have investors come in. We had a dentist, an awesome guy in Rome, who was our first person in, and then your hometown, Rome, Georgia, go Rome.
That's right.
And then slowly but surely, others in our circle came in with a little bit of money, and we had raised a little over $500,000, and we were trying to get a little more. And at that point, another producer team who had raised some money and had a fund going read the script and really liked it and decided they wanted it to be their first feature that they produced and invested in. And so we joined forces with them, and then the strike happened, the actor strike happened. So we had to wait, 8 months and let that end. And then finally at the end of 23 into early 24, we began principal photography. But we probably had a year and a half of of meetings, and we met with 300. That's an exaggeration. Probably 200 people over the course of that time, and most say no, but then slowly but surely, with persistence and their belief in the project, people started to agree to put their money behind it. And we didn't have anything but a dream, basically. I mean, we didn't have any cast attached. We didn't have distribution lined up. We were really selling people on our approach to it and the subject matter. This story really hadn't been told before, and NIL is such in the zeitgeist of sports reporting these days. So I think the timing was really right for the movie. And I don't know. And I'll close with this. That's really what kept me going all these years, because I would get discouraged and think it's never going to happen. Then the other part of me just told myself that when the time is right, it'll happen. You just have to just be persistent. Every no gets you closer to that yes, and you just keep trudging along.
Well, let's go back there real quick. Obviously, you're drawn to sports narrative, and I mean it's the mainstay of your career. There's a point where it becomes subject that you're passionate about to, oh, this is also our built-in audience, and this is part of our marketing. This is actually part of our business plan. And is there a moment there where that kind of turns? Is that when Champ comes on, or like I'd like to know about that process where you're actually, now we got a business plan. This is how we're going to get this film made.
Yeah, good question. I had always kind of thought there was a big audience. I mean, I played sports in college. I came up in sports promotion. I felt like there's always, and I know the numbers behind just people that geek out on college football recruiting is like 90 million visitors a month to college football recruiting websites. And I'm not even that into it. I don't even do that. So there's a huge audience there, but then the bigger college football audience, I thought that they would be drawn to this story possibly. So I always felt like that audience was there, and that I could be a part of helping market to it, just because I'd done that in my career anyway. So that was always a very strong selling point that we took to the potential investors. And Champ is a very business savvy guy, really sharp dude, and he got that right away, I think too, and I think that's what attracted him to it as well.
Seems like it really also created a momentum, because I remember speaking to you in Rome, 4 years ago, and I was thinking like, oh, okay, now we're gonna get this thing made. The precursor to the strike. That's when I knew it felt like a real thing, so I was excited. Well, hey, this is the first time collaboration between you two, and I would love to talk and explore a little bit about the director-editor relationship as that grew. Um, pardon me. So, Glenn, I had the privilege of being entrusted with helping build out this team, and I also want to shout out to producers John and Christy, who were also part of the formation here, that also knew who I was in the post producing space, and so it was kind of a nice nod to know that you, John, and Christy all had my back, and so I was really excited, like I said, to introduce you to Patrick. But preceding this, this first conversation with Patrick, since you actually haven't collaborated with him on a feature before, this is also not your first feature. You had I want to point that out there. So I want to know what the expectations are as you as a director, and what you're looking for in that initial, basically interview process with meeting Patrick.
Yeah, I mean, I think the initial thing is like, are you vibing with this person, and you feel like you can sit in a room with them hour after hour and collaborate and have a good, productive back and forth. So, I mean, I think like in most business meetings, the personality compatibility is probably the initial thing that you have to have in place, because if that's not there, then the rest is really tough for that to follow. It can, but it's tough. And then I just was familiar with Patrick's background. You told me a lot about him, so I was comfortable in terms of his editing chops. So that I felt very comfortable with. And once we talked about the movie a little bit, and just about the his vibing with the story and approach to it, I felt very, very comfortable that it would be a successful collaboration.
Yeah, it was very much you bring your tribe, I'll bring my tribe. We'll go make the movie, which I appreciated. But I know that you guys hit it off. Patrick, I know that you have an interview process too, especially when meeting a director the first time that you've worked, and this is going to be y'all's first time, collaborating. What are your metrics of success for, figuring out how to work well together? What is your prep?
Yeah, I mean, like Glenn was saying, I think that first initial meeting kind of really does go a long way, because it's a two-way street, right? Like he has to like me, but it's also really good that I like him, right?
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and feeling like we're speaking the same language. So, we just sat down and I asked him. I was like, okay, so what's the movie about? He told me. We talked a little bit about college football. I mean, I am not like a massive like sports guy or anything like that, but I did grow up in Georgia. I've been surrounded by that world, with some very fervent admirers my entire life. And so it was something that I felt familiar with that aspect of it. And I mean, I grew up right outside of Athens, where UGA is. So I mean, it's just something that has been in my DNA for a long time. So I felt like I could speak the language, you know what I mean? And like I felt like I just was familiar with that. And from there, we just chat a little bit more. I'm always big on talking about any influences or inspiration that might be the case. And so there's like, just like really quickly, I mean, Glenn was like, yeah, I mean, there's an aspect that's a little bit Raising Arizona. There's an aspect that's a little bit Friday Night Lights. There's an aspect that's a little bit this, which is good for me just to go and refamiliarize myself with sort of tonally. Even if it's not going to be that so explicitly, it's good for me to kind of just be in that world a little bit, and just even things like music and just approach to comedy and jokes and all that kind of thing is helpful. And from there, I feel like once we decide, yeah, I can be in a room for 10 hours with you for a bunch of days and we're speaking the same language. I mean, I think from there, it's like Glenn goes off and directs the movie and checks in with me a little bit. And then I'm getting footage. I have my assistant. Michael Cheeves was my assistant editor on this movie. And we were really close. And then from there, it all comes down to just turning in that editor's cut, right? Like,
Yeah.
and Glenn does something that I like, which is, I mean, and some directors are very, very like they want to be there for every cut, and I think that's great, but then there are other directors that, they're off shooting and they want to, they want things to be getting put together. And so I like being able to have that time to just get a full cut of the movie down. I told Glenn, I was like, look, I'm going to go ahead and like, we're going to sound design it. We're going to clean up the dialogue. We're going to have a full cut to script. We're going to temp score it just to get ahead of any of those, because you never know. Sometimes a piece of music might spur some other series of ideas, or might enhance a joke. And so any of that stuff you can get ahead of. And to share with other members of Post is always good. And so that's what we did. And I mean, I know the question was about like, what's the metric for success in terms of, the interview, but I mean, it's walking away, I think, being empowered to just kind of put your best foot forward and have the trust to know that, we're going to go in and we're going to tweak it and we're going to crack things open and we're just going to just keep making it the best it can be. So it was just a really good, it was just a good feeling walking away from it. Like I wasn't nervous to start the movie.
Yeah.
Drew, can I say something real, Drew?
Oh, please, Glenn. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, for me, just in terms of process, I know we'll get into this more later probably, but I always like to let the editor take a stab at it without me being in their ear, and just having it, it comes down to like letting an objective person that you trust give you notes on your script. It's the same kind of thing with the edit. Let them have it, and they're not tied to anything. They're seeing it with clear eyes, and to me, that's important. Just letting them have a crack at it, because a lot of times I'm pleasantly surprised. They're going to cut something in a way that I didn't see, and maybe that wouldn't have happened if I was hovering over them, just really nitpicking every cut early in the process. I think you got to let it breathe a little bit and let them do their thing. That's why they're there, as opposed to you know, being super prescriptive throughout the entire process. As we get into it later, obviously, then we really needle down on fine details. But early on, I mean, I love just having him cut stuff and send it to me or check in. Yeah, the scene's cutting great. You're good. Don't worry about it. We got everything we need. That, you know, that was a big relief off of my back in the shooting process, because you can sometimes you hold on to a scene that you shot 2 days ago and you're like, damn it, did I get that? Did I get that coverage right? You know, and it can kind of weigh you down and distract you. So knowing you got a green light and everything turned out well, that was nice as well, with them cutting while we were shooting.
Yeah, I mean, in my role as sort of a little bit of a matchmaker role and trying to get you guys together, but I'm trying to just get you guys in a position to where Patrick can do the thing that he's saying is sounds like you're just trying to establish trust extremely early, Patrick. And then, but thankfully both of you and all of us here, this is not our first rodeo, and we actually trust the process of collaboration. So that's what I'm hearing a lot from Glenn right now, is basically saying, I know I can get a lot out of the editorial process if I let them do their job. Thanks, Glenn. Appreciate that. But
Exactly.
but that's a reasonable expectation, even though I mean, it's not your first directorial rodeo there, but it is your writer director baby. And that's a lot to bestow on us, and we appreciate that. And Patrick, yeah, I mean, getting in there and winning that trust early, obviously. I mean, did you guys establish any kind of check-in protocol during production? Because I know you mentioned like, hey, this is cutting well, or maybe I'm worried about this scene. Is there any kind of conversation that you guys got to enjoy by being involved early in prep and then carrying that into production?
I don't remember a protocol necessarily. I just remember I would check in, or you might check in. I would hear it from you or from one of the producers. Everything's looking good. So it wasn't anything overly structured, but there was definitely communication flow while we were shooting. Is my recollection of it.
Yeah, no, I think it's totally that. I mean, you know, we can, you know, it's one of those things where, you know, Glenn knew that if he called me, I would answer the phone. You know what I mean? So like, I'm in there, you know, working my hours. He's off, but you know, we would get the occasional phone call. You know, and again, I'd call Michael, my assistant, in, and the three of us would just come in and have a quick chat, about, you know, what we're working on, what was shot. Glenn would let us know what they're about to be doing. And I don't think there were too many moments where it was like are you sure we got it? Are you sure we got it? Like it was just kind of I think Glenn was just looking for a vibe of like whether we thought the scenes we were getting were working. And we did think they were. So I think it was totally just that.
Well, Patrick, let's dive in. Let's do a really hardcore Adobe nugget here. And before we get into first cut, director's cut, and the cutting room, I do know that this is a tip to tail editorial workflow done in Adobe, and namely in Adobe Productions. I know that this film ran through a traditional offline online process inside of Adobe. I would love for you to walk us through how you and your assistant, Michael Cheeves, built out the cutting room and set up to handle, obviously, dailies through run of post.
Yeah. So, you know, one of the good things is that Michael and I had the benefit of not directly collaborating before, but he was an assistant editor on our previous series, Creep Show. So one of the good things to bring up that show is that that's where we truly dialed in our current workflow, our current like offline editorial workflow for our production template that we use for every project. And so that entire process was something that was very familiar to him, and he didn't like have to learn it. So he was able to really take the reins and just build that project out. But it basically is a tried and true, you know, we get our dailies in. It's great. A project like this is great because Moonshine does the dailies, you know, and like the dailies are being generated feet away from the cutting room. So if there's some kind of thing we need to look at, right, the assistant editor can just walk down the hall or walk over a few feet or to another room and find the dailies tech, right, who generated that stuff, and it makes that super smooth. So we are in Premiere Pro, which our workflow is generally for an offline edit, always going to be HD ProRes proxy dailies with 24-bit sound attached to it. It's a tried and true, almost flawless workflow. And so Michael would come in, get the dailies. He'd ingest them into Premiere. He would make sure all the metadata and all that stuff translated correctly. And from there, then we just talk about what we want to get done that day. He'll be throwing me scenes. I'll be trying to chew through however much per day. I always tell myself if I can do 4 to 8 minutes of new material a day, then I can't possibly be falling behind. That's my biggest thing that gets in my head a lot. I when I'm editing a movie, I'm always convinced that I'm falling behind, and I rely on other people like Michael to be like, you tell me if I was falling behind, right? And he'd be like, yeah, you're good. Just keep going, and so he would toss me scenes. And then we would just review what we had cut. If there was anything new, he's my first audience member, right? I show him first just to be like, did that make sense to you? Did that read? And if there's something I'm worried about, like, did you feel that character feel that thing? And he'd be like, oh, totally. Or he'd be like, I mean, you could maybe, we could talk about ways to enhance it. Or he might be like, yeah, let me go. That'll totally work once I'm done sound designing it. So he would go off and sound design things. We're both working on temp score, trying to just find any number of tones. And that's really it, and then you start, it's always, you start the movie and scenes start coming in, and for a while you just don't know what it looks like because they're all out of sequence. And then eventually you have like a 15-minute chunk, right, of scenes that flow into one another. And that's always a good milestone. And then from there, I mean, yes, truly, like, comes in, we had the movie divided up into reels, and we're just getting in there and polishing them until we have that first sort of cut to script cut, and then we just dive in to putting as much polish as we can in, because our ultimate goal, especially when showing the director for the first time, is to not have there be anything from a technical perspective that's going to pull them out of it. Even though it's all temp and it's all still rough somewhat, we just like to go in and polish, really clean up the dialogue, make sure those music cues make sure the mix overall is not, stupid. Right. And so that's the process. It always happens in a little bit of it's always blurry thinking back on it, but that's pretty much what our workflow looks like on almost every project. And that's what we did.
Yeah, big shout out to Michael Sheaves.
Cheese is the boss. He was a big part of the process, like Patrick was saying. We all went back and forth a lot. It was definitely a team vibe.
Yeah, he's a fabulous career AE, working at the top of his game on James Gunn features and series and Marvel stuff. It's awesome. I know that the beauty of, obviously, I appreciate you bringing that up, Patrick, of building out the Premiere, the Adobe Productions model. It's sufficient to say that it functions in the way that most of the Avid bin locking infrastructure has been dominating most of the editorial space for the last decade. But it allowed you to both work seamlessly in the same collaborative function in a traditional assistant editor functionality. Is that right?
Yeah, well, 100%. Again, we would, we're both cranking away in one production at all times. We both have our own projects that we're working in, and we both have our own sound effects projects and our own music projects, and it's just a great way to keep track of everything. And I mean, at this point, it's obvious, it's designed for long form editorial, obviously, but I mean, at this point, it's one of those things where I just use a production. Again, I have a template, so I use the same template on every project. And so if it's a movie, a TV show, a 30-second commercial. It could be a sizzle reel. I just use that same template over and over and over again because we have it built out in a way that it just has everything I need and everything stays organized, and project files don't bloat out of control in terms of size. And yeah, we've been doing that for several years now, and there are no editors over here that seem to be trying to get away from it.
Yeah, we're artists and storytellers. We use whatever tool is best for the job. We've really enjoyed, again, that productions functionality has been kind of the linchpin since 2019 to make it more accessible in our feature and series workflows. A lot of people see Premiere often as synonymous with creator economy tool, but we've been using it on AMC, Netflix originals, features, this theatrical feature that Glenn's getting done right now. I appreciate that deep dive there. We should probably do a Adobe Productions separate podcast sometime.
And yeah, and you were, and one of the things is too, I do have did record a video the other day that we'll put out where we actually crack open the production and see the timeline, just so people, for anyone that's interested, can get an idea of what just when the day you lock a movie, kind of what that sequence looks like before it gets cleaned up for turnovers. So
awesome.
maybe that'll be informative or interesting for anyone who's interested in that.
Absolutely. Well, hey, let's dive in. First cut. This is a delicate dance here, getting from assembly to director's cut, and laying down your editor's cut before he sees it, Patrick. I'm going to start with you, Patrick. I really want to know how you approach building the assembly and completing your editor's cut, knowing it's going to be the director's first experience of their film in post. And I know that you've auditioned it in front of Cheese, which is actually a really cool mention there. But would love to know how you approach building that editor's cut.
Yeah, I mean, I talked a little bit about just our workflow and that kind of thing, but and a sort of metric I have for myself in terms of, as footage is coming in, how much I should probably be getting through a day. But really it just comes down to, does this scene do what it needs to do? Yes or no? And so I'll do that. And I have various different ways of, once I have the scene kind of cut together, different things I'll try, whether it's showing it to someone else like Michael, or, my sort of favorite thing to do, especially with anything where there's a lot of emotion involved, is to watch it without sound, right? Is to just go through at the end of my day and just turn off all sound and just see if I can understand what is happening visually from the actors' faces, right? Because that, I still generally believe at the end of the day, that's my most important role. Like, yes, I am cutting things together, but it is my job to get the best performance in the timeline for Glenn to see up front. And we know we're going to change takes later, but that's something that I always feel very, very, I just take very seriously, because acting is very, very hard. And, and you sometimes will have so many little moments that come together to create that performance across many takes. So we spend a lot of time doing that. Yeah. And again, from there, just, you start getting more and more, you start being able to watch longer stretches of it. I mean, that's just so much of it is you just have to watch it. And especially in that first time, I'm the first audience member, so I have to like it. I have to be able to justify what I'm doing. And if I can get to the point where I'm like, I think that scene works, I think that's all right, I think that's pretty good, and move on, then I think that's what that initial chunk of time is. Again, knowing that things are gonna change, but I like to just put my best foot forward. I don't like to do alts. I don't like to have different approaches to scenes like banked away. Like, I am prepared to walk in with a filmmaker and say, here you go. I mean, like, this is what I have. The term editor's cut is really misleading, right? Because it makes it sound like the editor thinks that's like the definitive version of the movie, which of course it isn't. That's what you were able to achieve in the schedule and the allotted time. But yeah, I just really harp on, I have to like it. I have to think that it's something that's working. Um, and I mean, there's a great example of a scene. Sometimes when you're editing, you have a weird day, and you have I'm sure it's the same thing directing, right? Where like sometimes you start off, and the first few setups you're like, I don't know, we just haven't like caught it yet. We haven't caught the fire. And there was one scene in particular where, I mean, I remember working on it, and then it was pretty heartbreaking, around noon, maybe 12:30, and I made myself start it over, because I just was like, I'm just not gonna quit this. I'm just gonna start over. This isn't working. You got to find another way in. And now when I look at it, I always remember that, and it makes me smile because it is a funny scene. It's a comedic scene. So, one of the things about comedy is there's so any opportunity you have to make a joke, you take it. That's one of my a little BTS moment. That was tough, just starting over, but it happens. It's good in the long run.
I want to come back to that scene. Well, okay, so I know that we're working within you're keeping lockstep with dailies as production's going. Glenn's out there doing the damn thing, actually getting it in the can, and you're cutting through your dailies, working through your scene work. You've got to get X amount of footage down, as you said, on your daily quotas. That's kind of how you're dealing, because you have your allotted time to do your assembly, plus your allotted time to do your editor's cut before Glenn is ultimately going to show up for his DGA, director's cut. So I know what I'm picking up here is, obviously a large part of it is cutting to script, the movie we all drew out to shoot. But then what I'm also hearing is, I have to like it too. That's my taste, and that's what you're putting in.
Yeah, and and you do bring up a good point there too about the cut to script. I mean, I do, anytime we always know we're gonna probably lose scenes. Anytime you turn a cut in, but that's also a big thing too. Is I do think it's really, really important that I am at least attempting to get down everything that was in the script. Everything that's written needs to be seen, so the director can start to make a decision about what we want to keep. Now, I'll always have a document, maybe just waiting, of like, hey, if we need to lose, if we decide we need to lose some time later on, this is maybe where I think we could start and look at. But that's also very, very, I think, necessary. I could go in and be like, yeah, I don't think we need this scene, but I just don't think that would be very appreciated in the first cut, so yeah.
Well, I'm going to get to Glenn, I promise, but Patrick, what is the level of standard of presentation for this director's cut? Because I've heard you say before, like, this is the first time they're seeing it, and they don't know you're a hack or not until they see it, and then trust is formed.
Right.
But they don't really trust you until they see the thing that you put, the first cut. And so, and Glenn, you maybe have another thought on that, but what is the level of presentation we're trying to get down, or that you're always aiming to get down for the direct to present as your editors?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's I'll just go back to I have to like it. I need to feel like I can justify every decision that was made. Like, I definitely don't want there to be a moment where Glenn sees it and it's like, I don't think I understand why it's cut like that. You know what I mean? Like, it has to make sense. But again, yeah, it really is. It really is just getting in there and smoothing out as much of it as you can. Anyone who works in post understands that sound is just as important, if not more important, in some ways than picture. Anytime you can get a temp via visual effect going, making sure that you're hitting music beats. There are moments in this movie where it's pretty obvious that there's going to be score there. Like, all that stuff needs to be present, I think, or at least that's how it's worked in my career. There are definitely some, very, very, very established editors who work on extremely high budgeted movies, right? And they'll talk about how, yeah, like, we're just focusing on picture only. If we can't present something the best that it can be, then we don't want to waste time on it. And that's also valid. But in my career to date, like, it's always been, I think it's appreciated, to kind of have things built out and polished to some degree. Like, you got to be taking, you have to get some of that score in. You have to put ambiance in. If someone's firing a gun, like, you need to put some gunshots in. You need to kind of work with it and just try to make it as immersive. Because I don't want Glenn to hear a clipped dialogue track or hear a bad, like, audio edit, like a little pop or whatever, and him, it kind of like gnaw away at him while he's watching something. So there is a standard there that we have to hit, that I take very seriously. And once we're there, I mean, yeah, you just eventually you get to the point where you say, here we go, and then you just kind of wait for them to watch it. And if you don't get fired, then I think it did what it needed to do.
Proceed. Glenn, what are you for this film, how are you preparing for your director's cut, and what was the expectation before you got in the room?
I don't know that I really necessarily, prepared. I knew once we got in there, we would start working with things. I will say, like Patrick mentioned about taking his time, pulling the best takes. I don't remember ever going in and saying, "Oh my God, why'd they use that take?" I mean, the takes were really good. I just kind of let it flow over me and try not to watch it with a hypercritical eye at first. And then after that, if there's anything that jumps out at me, we address it. And then we go back through it again, and then start fine tuning little moments and improving timing and those kinds of things. But I don't know. I just try to keep a clear mind and an open mind when I'm going in to watch it initially. And Patrick makes a great point. I do think it is very helpful to have the audio in a decent place, because it is jarring if sound drops out, or between takes, if that's not smoothed out, if the music is way off base. And there was some music early that Patrick shared with me. I'm like, nah, man, that's not the vibe. Let me send you some that are a little more what we're thinking of. And I sent him those, and he plugged those in. So we alleviated a lot of that early, and we got on the same page musically, which helps it just flow over you a lot better. So yeah, I don't know, that was just the process for me. I try to be open minded, and then after, like Patrick said, you watch it a bunch, and then you start seeing the warts, and you address those, and just really start tweaking the timing of it all.
I know we did have the benefit of a legitimate, cut cycle. So we had our assembly,
Yeah.
our editor's cut, our director's cut, our DGA minimum, and then we actually had a producer's cut.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's an unspoken dialogue here going on that you benefited us with, which was, your circle takes, which
Yeah.
a lot of
Yeah.
directors worked very differently, but, we're following your lead and looking for that breadcrumb trail, obviously, in
Yeah,
post, so that
I think that's critical, and I did try to be. At one point, my script supervisor was like, "You got to slow down. You can't give me every freaking 10 circles in one take," because I was like, "That's that word." So I did start to chill out, and just would highlight moments and bigger lines, as opposed to like really finite details in each dialogue bit. But yeah, no, the circle takes are critical, and I appreciate the diligence in paying attention to that, because a lot of thought, you're in that moment and you feel it in your gut when an actor hits something, and I got to pass that along to the editor, so that they know that's exactly the moment I was looking for, and let them take the ball and carry on with it.
yeah, kudos to you. And I mean, every process of filmmaking or series is different. We work with a lot of directors throughout, especially on series, and because they're just in and out. But
Yeah.
that was pretty crucial, and also very well orchestrated, I think, between both of you, just as an outside observer on that, of like, okay, hey, we actually have a pattern here that we can assuage any kind of malaligned expectations. We can hit the tone that we're going to get into here. Well, let's dive into. All right, so this film does swing between comedy and drama.
Yeah.
That's kind of a difficult dance, sometimes hard to calibrate. Especially when you don't want laugh undercutting, heartbreak and vice versa. So, Patrick Group, we'll start with you. Would love to know, what's striking this tone before Glenn's getting into the cutting room with you at the onset. How are you approaching this genre? Because you've cut across horror, family, thriller, whatever. And this is probably your first sports dramedy.
Sure.
What's your approach? Do you look for breakthrough scenes that just got to get the scenes down? I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, it's that's probably the trickiest part of putting this movie together is just, again, and I think it comes back to a taste thing, but and watching it, but you just have to just kind of keep following your gut and making sure, if a scene is meant to be funny, is it funny? And if a scene is meant to be dramatic, is it dramatic? And you have to feel that sort of like musical pace of it, right? Of, is it too much? Is it not enough? Do we need to enhance something? Like if something's meant to be funny, what's the music cue that we can really amp that up with? Which, as Glenn may remember, that's when that Raising Arizona influence really kind of creeped into that the offline edit, because we tempt it with Raising Arizona score, right? You know what I mean? Things like that.
Or no music, like the scene you did where Brad Carter, Uncle Ronnie's cranking the motorcycle. You just let all the sound drop out, and it's just him failing
Yeah.
to crank this motorcycle, and the audience laughs at that every time it plays.
That's great. Yeah, that was one of our favorites once we got that put together. So yeah, I mean, I think it's just being constantly watching it and making sure that the individual scenes are doing what they need to do, and just making sure that it never feels jarring. There just has to be, you just have to very, very kind of confidently get in and out of these scenes. From there, the actors are going to do the work. So it's just it's just that gut feeling of does this make sense? I mean, does this feel right? And there are definitely moments where, you'll have something ridiculous, like a guy gets tied up and put in the trunk of a car, and then he gets broken out and he's tied up and he's really mad and he's a comedic relief character. And then you go into the very next scene of someone hitting their absolute breaking point, right? At the towards the tail, 75% of the way through the movie or so. And I just remember thinking, like, okay, because what's interesting too about the actors is that all of this is on the page, but some of it you really see it when you see the actor's face behind it. Like, again, talking about like Brad Carter, right? Glenn, like Ronnie's funny on the page, but then when Ronnie shows up in the scene and that's that guy and he starts talking, like, the humor, like, you get it. I was like, oh, okay, now I understand, like, really who this guy is. So yeah. I mean, that's really where I come from on it. Is if it's supposed to be funny, are they laughing? If it's not supposed to be funny, is that emotion coming through? And does any of this ever feel jarring?
Glenn, as writer director, but writing this, there's also in post we have a phrase called post writing. How are you balancing protecting your original written vision with the discoveries that you guys are having, and also maintaining this tone or a new way to build the movie in your director's cut?
Yeah, I try not to be too precious about that, and like too precious about my writing art. Uh, so I don't remember a time where that necessarily came up, but I'll elaborate on the scene Patrick mentioned when we go from Uncle Ronnie being pulled out of this trunk and fighting mad, and he says some funny, crazy things, and then the very next scene we're in with the other character he mentioned, and it's her breaking point. That was, just getting into the realities of production. I had to trim like 10 pages out of the script, so that transition wasn't in the original script. That was a byproduct of, you got 18 days to shoot this thing, you can't have all these locations, you got to condense locations. And so that was something, that a choice I had to make. And I knew it, tonally it was challenging, but then that challenge then rolls over onto the editor, because we it was just the reality of our budget and the amount of time we had to shoot the movie. uh, so I did think that worked well. I was pleasantly surprised that, Patrick let it breathe a little, and let that moment breathe a little before he went into the house to discover the character that was struggling, and the music tone shifted properly, and it just had a minute to breathe. And I think, as he's talking about just knowing in your gut when it feels right, and striking that right tone. There's just something that's instinctive. You can't really teach that. It's just something that you feel more than anything.
Well, that begs me to ask: was there, every movie has a bear or a tough scene, and I'm curious what your
Mm.
proving point or tough scene was in this film, and how you guys resolved it together in the cutting room.
Yeah, the one I was most nervous about, and I think it was our toughest day, and it was a heavy page count. It was probably 7 or 8 pages. We were shooting it was outside. We're shooting during literally the shortest days of the year. We had very limited sunlight, so everything had to go well. And it was a scene where our coach encounters the recruit's mom for the first time, and she's got some mental things going on, and there's some contention and conflict, and Mira's a brilliant actress, and but it was her first time doing like a deep South accent. So I knew there would be some things we'd have to work around there, a word here or there that we might have to work on. She did a phenomenal job and really prepared for it, and I was blown away by how she captured it. But I knew that was going to be a challenge. It was her first, big scene. It was such a pivotal turning point in the movie. And again, a lot going on, a lot gets established that serves as the catalyst for everything else that happens in the film. So that one was the most challenging. I do think it's the one we spent the most time on, just because there's so much subtext going on between her character, the stepfather played by Rob Morgan, the recruiter played by Michael Mosley, and there's a lot of stuff at work there that had to be massaged and really nuanced.
Patrick, from your point of view in the cutting room, how did you see this scene? Is it mutually shared?
Yeah, no, I mean, like, we definitely could tell, and you feel it in the script, that the introduction of this character, played by Mira Sorvino, is going to be just very important, because she is certainly the most like explosive character in the movie.
That's a good
And
word.
yeah, and it's the kind of like tonal thing that you just really can't fuck around with it. Like, you have to kind of get that right, or else it's gonna harm the movie. And so, Glenn's right that there's a lot of little moments that we really want you to notice. It could be, I mean, there's just it's just filled with them. Like, for example, the character of Otis, again played by Rob Morgan, who, um, like right when she comes out, there's a quick insert of him. He's just working, and he like looks up, right? And so, like, it's just a little moment like that where the actor gave this great little thing, but it just says so much, where it
Here it
says,
comes.
he's like, oh shit, like, I really wish she had stayed inside, right?
Yeah.
um for this. And so the other thing too is that when I get the footage prepped, when I see it, and I immediately am like, okay, there's a lot of coverage here. That is immediately a signifier to me, hey, this scene's important.
Yeah.
We
We
made
got two
sure that
cameras.
we got it, yeah. And made sure that we had a lot to work with. So, and then when you see that, you kind of go, well, I know what I'm doing today. Like I'm going to be on this
And tomorrow and the next
for
day.
yeah, today and tomorrow, and that kind of thing. You do it and you try to get it right, and then, but I knew that that was going to be one that he and I were going to bounce off of each other a lot on. And I remember just making some like dialogue tweets in particular in the director's cut. Like I just remember just certain moments where like Glenn's there, and we're just kind of. I remember it being kind of like this like very like live feeling where I'm just trimming words and things like that here just to find the rhythm that we wanted. And that was a really kind of like fun process though, because it was just, you just do a little trim, and Glenn's like, maybe just a little bit more. And I'm like, okay, here's about 3 frames. Actually, let me take that back one, you know what I mean? And then gradually, that's a full day of, of edit. And then you come out of it and it's like, yeah, I think that's better, so that's when you're in the director's cut, that's really what you want to feel every day, right? It's like, yeah, it's a little bit better than it was at the start. So
Well, let's get to the other side. We've got the film locked. It's out. It's finished. It's coming. Um, you've got you got to prepare for your theatrical release. Which, big applause, congratulations again, Glenn. It's incredible. How are you navigating currently there's got to be tension now between the creative product and the market demand, and you getting it to the big screen and attaching distro. Love to hear about that part of the journey.
Yeah. We're premiering in a couple of months at the Austin Film Festival. So we're super excited about that. After that, we'll do a screening at the Rome International Film Festival in Rome, Georgia. So that'll give us a nice launching pad for Georgia, I think, and we're super excited about that as well. And then we have aligned with a theatrical distributor, and our plan is to do a theatrical release in mid-January, just before the college football national championship game. Um, we'll hit theaters primarily in the Southeast, Midwest football, college football hotbed markets, because that's where our core audience is, and we feel like we can reach them really effectively with targeted marketing. So we'll see how things go theatrically. We've got a pretty robust marketing plan in place, and are assembling a war chest of content we've got a strong media buying plan to put that out into the world and reach our audience. And see how it does theatrically. We'll see how long we're able to last in theaters, and then from there we have a digital distributor that we're finalizing a deal with that will take it to all the digital platforms, SVOD, PVOD, all the VODs out there. So that'll happen, in a short window after the theatrical.
Well, you're going back to my initial question. What kind of indie are we? And you're the indie with they got to use the breathing room to make a really and tell a very compelling story, but also had a very robust marketing plan at the end of it. And
Yeah,
that's it's nice to
we
hear.
we've tried to be very entrepreneurial about it and be strategic about it. And that was always in the back of my mind. Like, is there an exit ramp for this? There's so many great indie films that I see and love, and but probably have a very very narrow audience out there for it. But I felt like this had much broader potential. We'll hopefully that potential will be realized, and people really like it, and we can get the word out to them and make them aware of it. But yeah, that was always part of the equation
Is
going into it.
Well, and then is there any lessons you'd be willing to share with other filmmakers that are preparing an indie
Mm.
feature for sale or prepping,
I
for their
think you
film?
need to be able to talk about how you are going to market it and who your audience is. I think that you know can be very very effective with potential investors and put them at ease that there is a strategy. The strategy is not we're going to enter 10 film festivals and pray that somebody picks it up. I think if you've got a plan that you can articulate, I think that's huge. I think having, in the back of your mind, knowing we're going to need to have a P&A raise at some point to get some of that money. Because I think a lot of, I hear this a lot of indies finish and they barely, because it's hard. You spend all your money to finish the film, and you got 10 cents left over to promote it, and you're only able to promote it on socials, and that's just a heavy lift. So if you can put some money aside for P&A, I think that's huge too. And having, hopefully you can hire a publicist and really, hire some folks to help you with the marketing of it, and put together a robust team to spread the word about it.
So what does Signing Tony Raymond prove? What's still possible and what's possible? I mean,
Yeah.
I do want to throw a
Persistent.
big shout out. This is Georgia made. That's
Yeah, it
very
is.
unique. It's Georgia money, Georgia production.
It proves persistence is omnipotent for sure, man. Because it just took a long time, and you can give up at any moment, and be justified, really, because you just have to keep going, because it's hard. But yeah, thanks for mentioning the Georgia piece, because yeah, it's all Georgia investment, an all Georgia producer team, shot all in Georgia. So this is, I mean, I grew up in Cartersville, Georgia. So this is a 100% Georgia born, Georgia made movie.
Full post in Georgia.
Thank you. Full post, all that.
Patrick, I'll come back to Glenn here in a second, but I'm, we're getting here towards our logical conclusion. I want to know what you're going to carry forward from this film as an artist, as a storyteller, because our job is collaboration in post if we're doing our job. And what are you going to carry forward from this film into your next one?
Yeah, I think, I remember back to being in the cutting room and those days where, it started off and, Glenn gets here, Michael's there, we start reviewing stuff. Our, post producer over at Moonshine, Travis, is going to show up and check in and say hello and make sure there's nothing scary happening. Like, we just realized we need a $50,000 VFX shot. You know what I mean? like that kind of thing. And I mean, my recollection of it is honestly that it just felt like three dudes making a movie, and it was fun.
Mhm.
There were certain moments where, like, me, myself, myself, Michael, and Glenn, like, we were just all riffing off of each other. And what if we do this? What if we try this? Okay, let's try that. Well, maybe then if we do this and do this, and that'll, 2 plus 2 will equal 4 there, and so on and so forth. And it just was a great vibe. And you always strive for that, but it was great because there was no remote work happening, so we all had that camaraderie in the room, which is something that I like. Remote editing obviously is very, very important and popular for any number of reasons, but I do like the camaraderie of being in the room with a collaborator. And so I think it's just a reminder for me that that personal relationship is something that you have to find and cultivate it, and make sure that everyone is still on the same page, because if you're on that same page, I mean, you could achieve so much more. And it for me, it's kind of set a standard in a lot of ways for how I want the cutting room to feel. I mean, it just was very, very comfortable. And so I it was just fun. It just didn't feel like we were at work all the time. So it's a great feeling.
Glenn, is there any imparting wisdom or something you're going to carry forward on
I
this?
would second that description. Yeah, I mean, we just bounced ideas and talked things through, and we didn't always totally align on everything, but we would talk it through and try stuff, and that was the beauty of it, is just being open minded and exploring, and then ultimately landing on the right take or the right choice. for a given scene. I totally agree with that work environment. It was very very positive vibe, and I feel like we were able to get a lot done that way. Parting wisdom, I just don't give up. It's hard. It's hard. It's hard. And I've got like 6 or 7 other scripts ready to go. That I pray I can get those made. But we'll see what happens. I'm just thankful to have gotten this one off the ground, because this one was my first one, and so it definitely was the baby, and the one that was most important to me, especially to stay attached to as a director. I've got other stuff that I would be fine if someone else wanted to take it and direct it, but this one, I felt like I really needed to stay attached to it because of the quirky tonality of it. I felt like I could deliver that, having grown up here and having lived with this story for so long.
My big view on the outside, as a big fan of both of you guys and the film at large, and so many of the craft workers that I got to make this movie with, is you guys took a very calculated business approach to a film, from a financing model to even a distribution model, but you didn't forego the required creative firing on all cylinders, like whole ass movie.
Mhm.
And especially in a time when budgets are shrinking and industry feels a little shaky,
It's
you
yeah.
guys did it. And it's for me, and obviously for a lot of the Moonshine team. Big shout out to Travis and JP, the colorist, and um and the rest of the Moon crew. Like, it's one of our favorite filmmaking experiences because it did not cut the corners of storytelling, and that's because of the diligence of the path to market that you took, and building that audience so that you actually have a plan. And we appreciate that, and it shows in the film too. So
Yeah, thank you.
yeah,
It's risky though. We could decide not to do theatrical and say, you know what I mean, and just go a digital path. There's some entrepreneurial risk in there, but yeah, you're right. You have to believe in it and build it, and just keep plugging away and trust that you're going to get there. 3 yards at a time, to use a football metaphor. You just
sure, there's one.
plugging away and getting it up the field. So yeah, it's exciting to see what's going to happen, and how it's all going to shake out.
Well, we look forward to sharing some of that social and shouting it out, as you get closer to AFF, as well as to your theatrical. Can't wait to see it in theaters. I'm gonna take us out. You guys cool?
Yeah, man, it was a lot of fun.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
Well, that's a wrap on today's episode of Moonshine Storytellers Podcast. I want to say big thanks to you guys. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Patrick. That's Glenn Owen, director and editor Patrick Perry. Thanks for taking us inside the journey of Signing Tony Raymond. I know we could have gone, twice, 3 times as long, but you'd both probably not enjoy it, and neither would anybody else. But there's a lot of spinoff we can go from. And so this is from decades of vision to the edit bay and to the upcoming theatrical release. Proud of you guys. But thank you, Adobe, for supporting this conversation today and empowering us in so much of the work that we do at Moonshine. And thank you guys for tuning in live. And we will we'll continue this. If you enjoyed the conversation, please, I have to tell you, maybe subscribe. Yes, please subscribe. Share it with a friend. Keep an eye out for more episodes like this, especially in this Adobe-powered mini-series that we're going to keep doing. And until next time, please keep creating, keep collaborating, and see you in the cutting room.